I've never been a big video game fan. That's probably obvious from the fact that I just used the term video game fan and not gamer, but I wouldn't accept either label. Don't get me wrong, as a kid growing up in the post-2000 world, I've played tons of video games. From dueling my childhood friends in Wii Sports and Assassin's Creed and MLB The Show in elementary school, to Stone Nights playing 2K and GTA 5 in high school, to exploring the worlds of Uncharted and Borderlands with my ex-girlfriend, I've spent a lot of time playing video games over the years. I've enjoyed all the games I've mentioned, and many more. But it always felt like there was some chip missing in my brain that every other guy in my class always had. That subconscious will that motivated them to spend hours and hours every day playing COD and Overwatch and Fortnite, or diving into the many worlds of Zelda and Elder Scrolls. I just never really possessed that. An older person listening to the statement I just made would probably laud me and say something like, "Good for you for not rotting your brain." But honestly, I don't think this quality I'm describing in avid gamers is a bad thing. What it is the capacity for immersion. Those kids who spent so much time logging hours on their consoles were constantly criticized and mocked by their parents and teachers, which I don't think is fair. Obviously, if someone is using video games as a mechanism for wasting their life or running from it, that's an issue. But most of the intense gamers I know hold down relationships and do well in school and have good social lives and hygiene and so on. I think they get criticized by older people because these older people don't really understand video games and how they feel to play. They see them as akin to television, the primary sit in front of the screen time waster of their youths. But video games, as far as I've observed, and as has been described to me, are an interactive process of deep immersion. It's not quite as productive as, for example, what I'm doing right now, creating something new, as gamers' actions are confined to the options the game developers allow for them to exercise. But gaming is a creative process, and just because it's not necessarily productive doesn't mean it's a waste of time. And while I defend gamers in their hobby, I have never quite experienced that special thing that locks them in to video games. I always found film and literature and television were far more immersive, because I could take something from them. Meaning and messages and understanding. Growing up, I wanted to be a director and then a writer. I fell in love with Fight Club and American Beauty and Infinite Jest and True Detective and many other stories, and I was unbelievably inspired to create stories in these mediums. But over the last few years, I began to feel my interest in TV and movies and books slipping. I wasn't sure what was happening. I just knew there was some kind of void where the immersion I once knew existed. But then one work, a video game, slipped through the cracks of my cynicism. A video game called FireWatch. For those of you who don't know, FireWatch is a 2016 cross-platform video game developed by Campo Santo. I'd seen video essays and artwork from the game before. It had been recommended to me by my friend Ethan, but I had long been putting off exposing myself to new art. I don't know why, but one day, I had my 5-bedroom apartment to myself for the evening, and $7 to spend on the PlayStation Store. So I cracked open a 4-pack of beer, sat down in the living room, and decided to dive into FireWatch. FireWatch is a first-person mystery game set in the late 1980s in the Shoshoni National Park. You play as Henry, a salt-of-the-earth man in his early 40s. The game starts with a brief text choice-making sequence where you learn about Henry's life. One night, while at a bar, Henry meets Julia, a professor of evolutionary biology. They quickly fall in love, and you can make choices. You can be kind of a dick or be nice. You can choose the name of your dog. But none of this ultimately matters. Regardless of what you do, Julia contracts early onset dementia and moves home to be with her family in Australia. Henry needs to get out, and takes a job in a FireWatch tower in Wyoming to spend the summer staring out into the endless forest for wildfires. Once Henry gets to the national park, he is called by a Delilah.
Two Forks Tower?
Hello? Whoever this is?
It's Henry, right?
Yeah.
I'm Delilah.
The other primary character of the game. She is funny, talkative, and shares Henry's sensibilities. Soon after arriving, Delilah sends out Henry to investigate fireworks being set off near the lake. Henry finds 2 teenage girls skinny dipping, and tells them off, though again, you can choose the tone Henry takes when doing this. The girls are pissed and call Henry a creep. Henry returns to his tower as the sky turns dark. He converses more with Delilah through his walkie-talkie.
So this is another one of your jokes.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
As he approaches his tower, he sees a strange figure with a flashlight.
There's some guy out here.
Some guy?
When he finally reaches his tower, it's ransacked. He phones this in to Delilah, confused.
Someone broke in.
Hey, what?
The next day, Delilah asks Henry to investigate a downed communication line.
Hey, wake up. That storm knocked out the phone line I used to talk to the service, which means we're cut off. I tried radioing out, and that's not working either.
Henry explores out and finds the line cut, again conversing with Delilah, joking, and learning more about each other on the way.
Anyway, Julia, girlfriend? Ex? Sorry, I don't mean to pry.
Henry also finds a backpack with a disposable camera that belonged to Brian Goodwin.
The bag had the name Brian Goodwin sewn into the top.
Huh. Wow.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I just haven't heard that name in a few years.
Who Delilah explains was a former lookout who violated park rules by bringing his young son Ned with him for the job. Delilah protected Brian by lying about Ned's presence, and one day, Ned and Brian abruptly left.
Where did they go?
I don't know. I never really hit it off with old Ned, and one day they were just gone. Sucks.
After further exploring, Henry finds the teenage girl's campsite ransacked. He calls Delilah, and she tells him the teens have been reported missing.
2 young women, Chelsea Stevens and Lily McLean, were reported missing.
Delilah protects both herself and Henry by falsifying a report, saying they never encountered the girls.
Should I just not say anything and save us the trouble?
The game then fast-forwards 2 months through the summer. A wildfire breaks out in the park. Henry and Delilah watch it at night, talking romantically over walkie-talkie.
Okay, I'm looking at it again.
I love how they look at night. During the day it's just smoke, but when the sun is down, you can just get lost. I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
I don't talk to the other lookouts as much as I talk to you. Not in the same way.
The game jumps another 2 weeks. Henry only has a few days left on the job before returning home. While out fishing, Henry discovers a radio and a clipboard in the woods, with the clipboard containing notes of his conversations with Delilah through the summer.
Someone has written down what we said to each other, have been saying.
After his discovery, Henry is knocked unconscious by an unseen figure, and wakes up to find the radio and clipboard missing.
I don't know. It's gone, along with the radio of theirs. Somebody out here could have just killed me, Delilah.
Journeying further into the woods, Henry discovers a fenced-off government research area. Henry breaks in and finds a small, empty government camp with surveillance equipment and typewritten reports of his and Delilah's conversations. Henry and Delilah start freaking out and theorize there is some conspiracy going on to observe them.
There's a folder of reports here.
What do they say?
They're assessments about the 2 of us.
Henry also finds a tracking device and phones Delilah, who suggests they destroy the camp,
We should just burn the place down.
but they decide against it. As Henry walks back to the lookout, the government camp catches on fire in the distance. The next day, Henry uses the tracking device to discover a key that unlocks the gate to an underground cave. Delilah phones Henry and reports that there is a figure in his tower.
Oh. Well, you're back in your tower. Maybe you need a drink too.
I'm not in my tower.
I am looking at a man standing in your lookout. And it's not you.
It is not me.
Oh my god, go.
I'm going.
And when Henry gets back, no one is there. But a Walkman is taped to the door that contains the incriminating voice call of Henry and Delilah considering destroying the government camp. Henry and Delilah grow increasingly confused and worried about what the hell is happening. Henry decides to use the key to investigate the locked cave and finds the decayed body of a dead boy, Brian Goodwin. Henry escapes the cave and reports back to Delilah what he found.
It's Brian Goodwin.
Gotta be fucking kidding me. How does that... What? I don't... How?
On the final day, an evacuation order is given to all lookouts as the fire spreads through the forest. As Henry prepares to leave and head out to the evac point, his tracking device starts beeping. He follows the signal and finds a tape from Ned Goodwin, who says Brian died due to an accident, and Ned has been hiding out in the forest for 3 years, not wanting to return to society. Ned warns Henry that if he decides to follow him into the forest, he will either die in the fire or Ned will kill him.
Don't come looking for me. Sorry about your wife.
Henry uncovers Ned's abandoned campsite, where there are stolen items from his tower, the teenage girls, and the government camp. Henry learns that the government camp was just there to study the wildfire, and Ned had been using the tracking equipment to ensure no one was searching for him, and created the transcripts to scare off Henry from investigating further. Henry finally makes it to the evacuation point as the fire absorbs the forest. He and Delilah say their goodbyes and ask if they will ever see each other again.
Maybe you could come back to Boulder with me and figure it out down there.
You don't want me down there.
Well, I just asked you.
Look, I've got some things to do in Casper, and maybe I'll head south sometime after that. I could come by, sure. I think you should go to Julia, and then you can figure it out.
By the time Henry reaches the evacuation point at her tower, she has already left. Henry boards the evacuation helicopter, and the game ends. FireWatch's ending is pretty controversial on Reddit and among game reviewers. A lot of people were thrown off by how the dramatic building of suspenseful elements, the shadowy figure, the missing girls, the surveillance equipment, the creeping sensation that you can't trust anyone, not even Delilah, is swept away at the end. All these elements resolve themselves in a more Occam's razor-y, tangible melancholy than we are used to seeing in media. Everything that seemed creepy and mysterious was actually normal. The scary is replaced by the sad. The tension resolved not by snapping, but by slacking. I think this was a bold choice. But after finishing FireWatch, I was gripped with a weird feeling that many people have described online. I felt simultaneously deflated and rewarded, like I'd learned some unpleasant but freeing truth about myself, and maybe about the world. FireWatch is only a 3 to 4 hour experience, but it was hard for me to map exactly how long it took me to play, because it's such an easy game to lose track of time in, to immerse yourself. And there are many facts about the construction of the game that make this feel super counterintuitive. FireWatch is a pretty small map with rigid limits. You literally never see another living character's face in the entire game. You see the teenage girls from a long distance. You only see Ned as a faraway shadow. You only see Brian's dead body. You never see Delilah. And even the helicopter pilot at the end wears a mask. You can pretty much only interact with objects as required by the plot. You have limited dialogue choices that barely affect the story. It's impossible to die in the game, or to kill anyone or anything, and the graphics are serenely beautiful, but they're not incredibly detailed with Easter eggs and secret rooms. You would think that a game like Fallout or Red Dead Redemption, with their enormous open worlds and near infinite character options and alternate endings, would feel more immersive, and for some people they are. And I have nothing against those games, they're great games, and I've had fun playing them. But I have never felt an ounce of the emotion and meaning and immersion in any other game than I did playing FireWatch alone on a random Thursday night. To explain why me and so many other people have this experience, I have to talk more about what it feels like to play FireWatch. And again, this is a great moment to stop the video, go play FireWatch, and come back. FireWatch immediately tells you that it is really interested in two things. The first is escapism. Delilah says this outright.
So what's wrong with you?
Excuse me?
People take this job to get away from something. So what's wrong?
Just from a plot standpoint, the inciting incident of the game is Henry leaving home because he is haunted by the absence of Julia. He wants to go somewhere where he doesn't have to think about the realities of his life. You later learn that Delilah similarly has a complicated relationship back home that the park is salvation from.
You have a boyfriend, Javier?
What the fuck?
Henry and Delilah obviously use each other to enhance this escape.
I wish I was over there.
I wish you were too.
Right from the outset, there is no world where Delilah and Henry will, or even can, end up together. There is one dialogue branch you can explore that implies they have phone sex while watching the fire, but they never see each other, they don't know each other. What they represent for each other is divergence from their partners. All the other characters embody this axiom. Ned is using the park to escape from society. Brian used comics and the promise of exploration and adventure to escape from the park. The teenage girls are embracing the escape of alcohol and freedom. And this element of escapism functions to explain the ending. The mysterious government conspiracy that Henry and Delilah let their imaginations run with is an escape. While playing FireWatch, you are constantly wondering what is happening, but you're not ever wondering why it's happening. You believe something dark and complex with high stakes is taking place. You just don't know what it is. After all, it's a video game, it's not real life. So when the rug is pulled out at the end, it's surprising. But like, what else was going to happen? This leads to the second thing that FireWatch really cares about. Determinism. Determinism is the philosophical concept that every event that occurs is caused by previous factors. In other words, there is no free will. I can't say FireWatch goes quite as far as to straight up endorse this idea, but the ideas of futility and destiny and immutability are deeply woven into the story. The game is deeply structured and set before you even start playing. Obviously, this is true in a literal sense for every video game, but playing FireWatch goes to the next level with it. The primary mechanic you use in the game is a map you carry with you, and later a tracking device. While playing, you are constantly charting your course through the park, stopping to make sure you are following the path that has been laid out for you, and resuming movement. The only real reward system in the game is when you get to certain crates around the park, you can unlock more of the map and find new trails. But these trails were already accessible and exist before you chart them. You just learn about the paths you can take that were already there. The very nature of Henry's job is to watch for a fire that will inevitably burn down the national park, and just wait there. He is not a firefighter, he's a fire watcher. When you get the tracking device later in the game, the sense of inevitability becomes eerier as you wander at night, responding to the beeps of a red light as you stumble in the darkness towards something you know is there. This combination of escapism and determinism that Henry and Delilah and Ned and you, the player, are all trying to escape from something that will inevitably occur is what fuels this post-game feeling. The illusion of the game that has been growing mistier and mistier as a story about mystery and murder and conspiracy is revealed to always have been about a lonely guy who took a job in the woods to run away and found other people who were running as well. FireWatch acts like real life, and we don't like that. The days are defined by large title cards, but they jump around. You skip over almost the entire summer in the blink of an eye, because that's how life works. Sometimes nothing interesting will happen for months. Many players have written about feeling emotionally connected to Delilah over the course of the game, and are disappointed that they don't get to see her face. Hundreds of sketches exist trying to capture what different players imagined she would have looked like. But FireWatch won't give this to you, because life doesn't either, and Henry has to accept that, and so does the player. For the entire duration of the game, Henry is escaping his real life, and so are you, while you play it. And when it ends and Henry has to return to his life, so do you.